and then we'll get into it. You are about to enjoy a Firearms Radio Network podcast. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individual co-hosts and do not reflect the official policy or position of the Firearms Radio Network and or their employers. Viewer discretion is advised. This is especially true on live shows. If you'd like what we're doing and would like to help support the show, visit patreon.com/afteractionproject. If you'd like to throw us some free support and appreciation, we would greatly appreciate a 5-star review on iTunes or wherever you're listening to this podcast. Tonight's episode, just like every episode, is brought to you by the Firearms Radio Network. Be sure to check out the other great podcasts on the Firearms Radio Network by visiting firearms-related.net. Our other sponsor is the RangeBuddy.App. If you haven't checked that out, I do believe you're missing out on a great tool to improve your range sessions, your practice sessions, add some random dynamicness to your training and your practice. It's RangeBuddy on Android and iOS. It's a collection of over 130 shooting drills that are all sorted by the required target type and filterable by the skills worked. And then it is the only virtual firearms instructor available to you in your pocket or the palm of your hand. It'll call out random commands for you based on the settings and the input that you tell it to. It'll give you a random move command if you're into doing some movement training when you're out there shooting. There's some shoot, no shoot decision-making drills that you can run in there where it'll actually briefly flash a shoot or a no shoot image and a whole bunch of other stuff. Be sure to check it out. That's the RangeBuddy app, available on Android and iOS. But let's get into...
When's the most recent drill you've added on there?
The put and patch drill. It just went live. That's the featured drill for the rest of this month. And I just want to say fuck Tyler for that. That was hey, you just, three rounds, 3 holes touching from 10 yards, no time limit, no big deal, right? No, forget that. That is it's much more challenging than you would think. Let's see. So yeah, we were on the range a couple days ago. Yesterday? Yeah, it was yesterday. And 3 more failed attempts at the put and patch. And I've told Andy I just got done listening to With Winning in Mind, and it's all about, positive mental talk. And so I'm telling him about that. And so we're setting up the drill, and I'm like, I'm going to, 3 failed attempts coming right up or something like that. And Andy was like, good book, huh?
Hey, in all fairness, listen, Basham, you come shoot it. I don't want to hear this Lanny Basham guy tell me about the putting patch. It ain't easy.
Yeah, with a handgun. He might be able to do it with a rifle, but have you attempted the put and patch?
Only accidentally.
Yeah.
Not since Tyler put his thing out, but it's happened to me before, like zeroing dots. Put a little pacer up, 10 yards, 0 dot. Oh, look, they're all touching. Yeah. Now, tomorrow when I go out to film it or whenever, they won't be. But
exactly. Yeah, when you try to do it. I think what I'm going to do next time is I'm going to do 3 rounds from, each round will be from the holster, because I overthink the second or third shot. My first 2 attempts, touching, shanked it to the right. So let's talk about the class. Tonight, we are joined by Kent Hauer of Green Mountain Defense, and we will be discussing their defensive pistol metrics course. Shit, man. No mess ups there. Cool.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, first in our extended time on air. So we're going to be talking about the defensive pistol metrics course. Before we get into that, Kent, talk to us a little bit about what got you into the firearms training industry.
Well, it was one of those things I fell backwards into. I ended up becoming good friends with the guy who owned a gun shop up in Bethel, Vermont. It's called Green Mountain Defense because for a while we protected the Green Mountains in Vermont. We're doing such a good job keeping them safe that we are now able to move south to Pennsylvania and continue to keep them safe. So they're like 100% defended. We're really doing a good job there. That being said, we're just neighbors to a gun store, which became a gun range, which became a place I hung out more, which became a place a friend asked me to part-time work and help out and stuff like that. One thing led to another, and I was starting to take classes pretty seriously. I was going out to the SIG Academy and stuff. If you get a map out, you look at Bethel, Vermont to Epping, New Hampshire, it's like an hour and a half straight east. So, that was the closest thing to good enough that I could get out to. So I was training and had taken a couple, national level trainers courses by that time. And I remember being in there on a Saturday and all the place is all abuzz and people are running around doing all kinds of stuff. What the hell's going on? Oh, we're teaching a gun class today. Who's teaching a gun class today? He said the name of the individual who worked there who's going to do it. That made me shudder a little bit. And I was like, what? Really? Okay. So I was the unpopular voice of reason in that group of humans who was like, we have no idea what the hell we're doing. And long story short, it was one of those, well, if you think you can do a better job, go figure it out, young man. And I said I wasn't interested. And then I was asked again, and I was asked again. And there I started. So I went and got my shiny NRA certificate, which was a yeah, right? Ooh.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Miss Dominus, you are now a firearms instructor.
Right. So all the FUD lore, right? I fell back into it. It was one of these like, this is how we do it, right? No. But we figured that out over not too much time. And I realized very quickly that if this was going to be a thing I stuck with, it had to be mine, had to be my standards, had to be my business, had to be my insurance, right? Because I'm not going to be able to live with myself otherwise if we half-ass this. So we incorporated in 2013 and haven't looked back since. If you took a private lesson from me in 2013, you are welcome to a free private lesson or a group of them in 2024. I'm telling you right now, there's like 11 people from the year of 2013 who deserve a refund, maybe 12. Not entirely certain, but
it's tough to say. But if we all went back and said, man, on the beginning of our career, if you took our class, you could come back for free, we'd lose even more money than we lose now.
I should have paid them people. Good God.
It's the best training that they've ever had, though.
You know what? For some of them, it's true. And unfortunately, in some circumstances, I happen to know some of those folks like needed to go to a gun. And as it turns out, I had a very early on student who had a firearms involvement. So like something's better than nothing, I guess.
Yeah.
If Kent today was present for her private lessons, then I'd be smacking myself. Like I'd just be like, no, God, no, that was a bad idea. But I mean, if we can't grow and admit that that maybe we have grown and have matured through our business, I don't know if I want to talk to that dude either. So I don't feel too bad about it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, I think the firearms training industry has changed so much in the last 5 or 6 years, let alone the last decade. And I think now we're really getting to a point where it's the rational, intelligent conversations are becoming louder than some of the old FUD lore crap that, it's been a while since I've seen the 45 versus 9 debate. You know what I mean? So I think as an industry, we've come a long way.
I think it's all too easy at this stage. The stuff that 2013 Kent versus today Kent, the stuff that bothers me about what I was doing then, should I say, is more just I was quite frankly parroting third-party information that I had just been given 11 or 12 months ago. And dare I say, maybe putting out unearned curriculum, right? I don't mean stealing. I just mean I just showed up 11 months ago or 12 months ago, and now I'm the guy, right? Looking back on it, that wasn't my intention, but that was the message that was delivered. And I'd like to think that I was really good, but the truth is we got lucky, right? And we learned and we grew and we came up with an actual business plan and figured out how to do this a whole hell of a lot better. And it didn't take very long.
That's awesome. Frank, reintroduce yourself to our listeners. Talk to us about how you got into the firearms training industry and what the hell brought you to the Green Mountain Defense.
So, so I'm Frank Horvath. One of the instructors at Apache Solutions in Yadkinville, North Carolina. We ran into Kent. It's been several years ago. we all kind of piled up inside this gutted out city transit bus, drove up to Pennsylvania with, what was it, 8 or 9 of our guys, and I ended up taking another instructor's class that Kent was at. Ended up pulling this big old city bus, 40-foot long bus in his driveway, and crashed for the weekend, and had an absolute blast. That was Phil Groff's vehicle defense, right?
AVD, yep.
Yeah, AVD, yep. Again, and anyway, so we've palled around with Kent ever since, for better, for worse. And we've again, just the Apache cadre in general, we've gone, we've been up there several times, we've hosted Kent several times, we've gone back and forth, and really enjoyed this relationship we've had with him. Hell, we've even taken over Kent's podcast, Sling and Lead podcast, once or twice. And it's been a real fun relationship, kind of going back and forth. And it's been pretty wild over the past several years. It's kind of funny. You stop and you sit back and you think about when you've met people, and the things, the shenanigans and the conversations that you've had. And Green Mountain Defense is one of those businesses, where there's people, right, that they're like almost instant family. So it's like you meet them and you're like, yeah, we see eye to eye on a lot of different things. We can fight it out, hug it out, whatever. And it's been rather fun ever since.
It was so that whole bus thing, man. So I had known Tim for like 2 years before that, maybe 3. And that whole like, hey man, you mind if I bring 9 other dudes up to your house in a tour bus? What? Sure. I can't possibly see anything wrong with this. What could possibly go wrong? That event is still talked about by my neighbors as like the time they thought Jimi Hendrix showed up, until they realized the Pelican cases weren't guitar cases. Those people were just like not ready for what rolled in. Until that point, I kept it pretty gray man in the neighborhood in terms of like who these Green Mountain people were that moved south. But boy, they faded out that weekend.
Yeah, that whole trip was an absolute riot. So the month prior, we're sitting there thinking, all right, how are we gonna get up to Kent's? We had already had this all planned out, and I was like, you know what? Oh, with it, I'll just go buy a bus. So found this old, Charlotte Metro city bus, right? It's like I said, 40-foot long, just great big old cab over bus, and we gutted out the entire inside, put a California King waterbed in the back, put racks, bed racks in there, had a little RV toilet, the whole 9 yards. And we ran into every possible issue on the way up. At one time we had a tire blow. We stayed in some gas station truck stop in the middle of West Virginia. The belt on the AC ended up ripping off at one point. I mean, it was just all kinds of issues. Fortunately, I want to say this was maybe divine intervention. We had a mechanic that was with us, like in the bus, as part of our crew. So
wait. 10 dudes from North Carolina makes a mechanic by default. You can't be like, oh, we had a mechanic. You had about 50 mechanics if you had 10 of you.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can't count everybody. I mean, Tim's, if it doesn't have, a trigger on it, Tim's pretty useless when it comes to mechanicking. But, I digress. But so Trey Joel, he was a mechanic. He ended up, selling his seat, or buying his seat on the way up, just with all the wrenching he had to do that thing. But anyway, it was an absolute riot. We had a ton of fun. And like I said, that trip going up there, pulling this great big old bus, I barely fit in Kent's driveway. It was fantastic. And that was our introduction to Kent. And that's where most of us met Kent. And we developed a relationship after that. His poor wife absolutely loved her to death, but she's like, okay, all right, yeah, let's do this. Here's all the food, here's all the things, can I get you this, can I get you that? Just absolute gracious host. And we've been pretty good friends ever since.
That's cool, man. Andy and I, we had nothing like that, other than the fact that we went up and we took a training course with an instructor and ended up bunking with a couple other guys at somebody that we've now consider a good friend. But I don't know, man.
We
That's
we
pretty
tend
cool.
to go all out, especially when we have like big groups of people. We get into some mischief.
Where's the bus at now?
It is in my property that I have, not here at the house, but somewhere else. A few years back, when it was actually when we were doing all Kent stuff, I had it parked in my driveway, and it's one of the reasons why I hate the HOA. They were coming at me about all different angles about different things, even though I'm not even a member. But regardless, it's another story for another time. But yeah, so I now have 2 of those buses, and they're cheap. They're like $2,000, and you have this 40-foot long. I mean, dirt cheap comparatively for what it is. Turn that thing into an RV, and yeah, it's right in style.
That's awesome.
You take it serious. 1 is none, and 2 is 1. I guess now, right?
Oh, no, yeah, a lot of things in life.
What how would Kent's students describe him as an instructor?
Passionate, 100%. That is the very first thing that would come to my mind. Kent is very serious once he flips that switch. So beginning of the class, cuts happy, joking, talk with everybody, and then it's safety brief. Guys, we're here for business. Let's do business. And that mindset of we're here to do work, we're here for a purpose, this is what we're going to do, this is why we're doing it, and why this is why I care, or why Kent cares. And the way that he goes about explaining those things with specificity is that is one of the reasons why I was telling you guys one of the previous shows that maybe it was a pre-show that you guys need to have Ken on here and need to talk about it, because this particular class that we're talking about tonight, defensive pistol metrics, that is out of all the different classes I've taken a number of different classes, from Joe Schmo down the street to nationally ranked instructors. Kent's classes, specifically defensive pistol metrics, is one of those classes that's up there that really resonates with me, and I've literally have told anybody that has the ability to attend one of his classes about it.
Awesome. Let's dig into that a little bit, Kent. What the heck is defensive pistol metrics? What are the skills that students are going to be working on? And I guess what's your end goal for the students after that class?
My end goal for students after class is to have them have teaching mindset is one of those things that can get very like woo-woo, right? You can just sensei somebody some mindset, and now they got it, or don't they, or do they feel like they did? But the numbers don't lie. So, like, what is that draw stroke? What is that B8 score? What is a reasonable? Hey, how am I tracking my transitions through a multiple target array, or whatever the metric is that we're focusing on? How do we apply those metrics to a mindset, and more specifically to can I do this? Do I think I can do this? Do I know I can do this? Or I just feel like I should try. And I'm sorry, man, but if my kids are downrange, I don't want you to fucking try. Try ain't it. Like, I'm sorry. Try in the moment. Try ain't it. You can go try 1,000 other things, but if we're doing this, we better be damn well serious. It's going to work out, right? So, pistol metrics, defensive pistol metrics, is the latest iteration of a higher level pistol class that I've taught, with more and more competitive shooting influences in mind, right? Because it's very easy to just kind of talk through a fighting handgun class or something and say what you should be able to do. It's another thing to host Tim Herron a couple times a year and then AI for the guy. And have somebody push your shit in with a pistol, like a lot, and then go, wow, wait a minute, that dude didn't say the word fight all weekend, but I damn sure don't want to fight him. Like, maybe we should rethink how we're approaching some of these skill sets that we're attempting to acquire. So I'm just trying to bridge that happy medium. I'm trying to give guys and girls the opportunity to really work out how they're going to improve on their guns, how they're going to track their own performance. while at the same time sprinkling in a very, very heavy dose of consequences, right? Now, you guys, this is the thing I usually say in this class, right? You guys got a preview on this one, but like, I have a dead kid. That's a thing in my life. I have lost a child in my life. So I use it as a teaching implement in this class to talk about, like, hey, man, what if those were your consequences? What if that was the outcome? Easy to talk hostage shots or whatever, but, you know, how's little man or little girl's life irreparably damaged when Papa Smurf here, Andy don't come home, right? Like, how is Mama's life irreparably damaged? What really are the downrange effects of the fact that I couldn't get you to dry fire for half an hour? Like, fucking really? I mean, if you're not going to carry the gun, if you're not going to do the thing, then don't do the thing. That's okay too. Nobody said you had to be the world's savior, but you're going to strap a gun on and you're going to say you're going to do these things. I just kind of hope you're not talking yourself into an honor and sense of capability. So my class is simply like what I've come up with most recently to push my own honor and senses of capability out in front of students, work on them live, and like, let's go. You want to talk draw strokes, or you want to do something? So you want to talk B8s, you want to do something. So we hit a lot of precision pistol work. We hit a lot of draw stroke specific work, stuff like that. We assume that you can reload a gun. We assume that you can fix a malfunction, right? This is all very clearly prerequisited, like who you need to be in this class. You need to be able to run a handgun, like operationally, keep it fed, keep it up, you know, keep your stuff running. So we're not doing a whole bunch of manipulation heavy drills. We're sprinkling in competitive shooting stages. And we're sprinkling in some of the more challenging pistol set drills that I could come up with and that I've seen. I could have said that, or I could have said it's like training with Pressburg and Tim Herron on the same weekend. I probably should have just led with that. That might be the easier. And I'm not Pressburg or Tim Herron. That ain't my point. Just a little dab out of each bowl is kind of like where my head's at with that.
Yeah, well, I mean, you definitely see the influences there, you know, and as you know, as a student, I remember the very first time I've taken, you know, the full disclosure, I've taken his defensive pistol metrics, you know, a couple of times. And you know, before the first time I took it, I had a stance of, all right, competitive shooting. I mean, I'm a defensive shooter. Like I have that defensive mindset. I really don't much care for competition shooting. Never really got into it. Never really saw a reason. You know, didn't jive with me. And you know, the more Kent would talk about it, and then after taking that class first time, I'm like, okay, I 100% see, you know, the need to, you know, kind of blend the two. You know, because that, especially in my area, you know, the old trope of, all right, well, you know, you got to go fast, not go fast. Oh, there's a no shoot. I guess that guy's not breathing right anymore. You know, just those stupid jokes that I would hear around, you know, those competitive shooters. To be quite frank, they piss me off. Like I could not stand that mentality of, oh, I just shot a no shoot, you know, and that kind of jovial feel about it. And then I'm talking with Kent, you know, both in the class and out of class, that we share that same anger. I mean, that's really what it was. It was just anger. It was just, you know, that joking about, you know, hitting that no shoot. You know, that's something. That's somebody's little girl. That's somebody, right? So there's a consequence to that. You know, the hitting that no shoot, and you know, that was one piece. Like I said, blending that competitive, that competition type world and the defensive shoot. I think, like again in that class, again, don't let me give away any secret sauce, but that really, you know, that's part of the bread and butter of that class. You know, being able to say, okay, these are the metrics, these are what we're going for, this is why we're going for it, and here's the data. So at the end of the class, you literally can pull up your information, your stats, and how you compare to other people, even in other classes, and go from there. So, I mean, it's absolutely worth its weight in gold.
Man, it's Andy and I were having this conversation a couple range sessions ago. We were talking about, which genre, of course, should we take? And it's because he's trained with Tim Herron a bunch. I've trained with him a few times. And I love the performance pistol, right? Because that's what a defensive shooting is. Who's better with the gun in that moment? Right. And for me, it's those performance pistol courses and a course that comes at from that perspective. Hey, I'm going to teach you how to shoot your gun very fast and very accurately. That's been kind of what's been calling to me. And then Andy brought up the point. He's like, man, we live in the defensive shooting world, right? Like the students that come to us, they're coming to us for defensive shooting skills. Are we getting away from getting the nuggets from defensive shooting instructors? When Kent was talking about it, and he was like, it's like Pressburg and Tim Herron. I was like, dude, I'm going to take this class. Because I think that is being missed, because there's a lot of even nationally known dudes that are charging $1,500 for a 2-day class for a defensive shooting or a combat focused shooting style deal, where they're not teaching people how to use their gun, right? And they're hiding behind this veil of good enough defensive accuracy. You still shot him type of thing. And it's like, no, man, it's not good enough. That 6-year-old girl that you just shot and killed, she was going to grow up and cure COVID or cancer or whatever the hell it was, like there's a consequence to what we do.
Yeah. And driving that back home, again, don't let me dominate the conversation, but driving that back home. So I threw a curveball at Kent unexpectedly, when he was down teaching this course, defensive pitch metrics at us. Long story short, he was coming and teaching at the Apache Range. Something ended up happening with my family where I needed to bring my little girl with me. Now she's on the range all the time. She's 7 years old. She's real squared away as far as knowing what to look at and look for and things like that. So she's you stick her in her seat. She's real quiet, kind of does her own thing. But if she had a chance, she'd get out and play and things like that. But anyway, so I pull up, and Kent's walking across the driveway, and you can just see it on his face, like, really? Like, are you really bringing your kid to a class? Like, come on, man, that's not cool. I could just see it all over his face. But there's nothing it was either I wasn't going to come to class, or I was going to bring Harper with me. And he ended up having a conversation with her, right, very first thing, and he said something like, if I say stop, I need you to go right to the seat and and stay there. And eventually, at some point during the class, he ended up saying stop, something like that. And she goes running back and sits in her seat, right exactly where she's supposed to be. And after some time later, we're at a break, and she's still sitting in the seat. And she goes, can I get up now? So she was like, asking his permission to move. Anyway, one of the breaks, she's down there at the targets, just kind of, being a kid. And Kent's having one of his lectures, and didn't need to say anything. He just turned around and was pointing down range. And man, the daddy tears were just, I couldn't stop it. Like, I was welling up hard thinking about, there's my little girl down there standing next to, a threat, a target. And that is a just visualizing that in my mind just wrecked me. And
so you got me on that one, because I was sitting there going, man, all I was thinking about was how many F-bombs I'm going to have to choke back on, because there's a 7-year-old. She's heard it. I'm like Fruit Loop and Frog, like, just every other F I could think of except for what I wanted to say. But at that moment, at that break, I normally gesture towards the consequences targets, which are like, it's a drill where we're shooting a very specific, difficult course of fire on B8s. And I gesture down towards consequences. I'm always like, hey, guys, listen, if you had to go right and no shoot in the white space for putting one out of the black on that B8, you imagine what it would look like if your kid was down there. So that's usually my gist. And I don't super script that shit. I know when it's time. I know what I'm about to say. And hey, dudes, check in. Listen up. Can you imagine? And I just turned, and there she is. And I'm like, yeah, that. Can you imagine that? Anybody have trouble imagining that? Because it's actually happening. And I'm like, hey, man, that's what Frank's seeing. Like, that's what Frank's visualizing right now. What are you guys looking at? And then them dudes are all just like, oh, my God. I'm like, all right, great. Now here's a demo. Let's shoot this thing. And they're all just throwing us up. We should clarify. We asked her to move before we demoed it. But
yeah, she was back in her seat.
It's all fun. It's all fun.
Yeah,
that was so.
She was definitely the RSO for the weekend.
When I stopped the class, because that dude, one gentleman had a minor muzzle wandering, so I did the old hard stop on class. I swear she was in that seat for 20 minutes. Like, Mr. Kid, I gotta pee. Can I get up or whatever? I'm like, oh, honey, I'm sorry, I forgot. I felt bad.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things where I don't think people visualize it. I definitely don't think we think about the consequences enough when we're out there on the square range practicing or training or whatever it is, shooting videos for the Instagram. So it's refreshing to hear that sounds like a big topic of discussion and a big, one of the big things from that class. That's cool.
Well, and the other thing is, the far too often, and that's one of the reasons why, again, previously to me taking this class, I was having such a hard time with the competition versus defensive shooting, that dichotomy, kind of, throwing it back and forth, was, more often than not, you hear what in competition world, go faster, shoot quicker. And, what ends up happening, why do you miss, is where you're outrunning your headlights, right? You're moving quicker, you're pressing the trigger prematurely, you're doing things faster than what you're actually capable of doing. And, in that, in defensive mindset and defensive world, like, you're having to think and make those decisions on the fly right then and there. Where on the competition world, sometimes you get a walkthrough, right? It depends, right? So you can kind of game it a little bit, and like blending that I don't even want to call it gamification, blending that, that decision, being able to react quickly. And while you're in the process of that decision-making process, there's very few examples, short of either actually being involved in that or doing some sort of, was it the live fire, not live fire, but the simulation fire, like
force on force.
Yeah, force on force. Things. That can elicit that same like response, right? That fear response, that response of that a big adrenaline dump and everything, and the way that Kent's able to go through and make your blood pressure rise through the process of the class and the course without the aid of force on force, just using that little annoying timer, it does wonders.
But just kind of to wrap it all up for my thought process of, Jeremy mentioned that we had this conversation, and it's indeed true. So when I first started, of course, the NRA pistol thing and all that, and then, Clint Smith, Dave Spalding, and I started doing all the defensive stuff. Then I meet Tim Herron, and it's like, okay, competition. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not a competition dude. I don't really care if I'm first or last. I just want to be better. And then another Tim Herron class, and I'm like, oh, I kind of care now. And then so I've taken, quite a few now of Tim, and it spurred this conversation, exactly what Jeremy mentioned. I was like, well, I've taken, competition. Am I starting to lose the self-defense part of training? And obviously you don't, because there's that whole silliness of like competition is separate from self-defense and all that bull crap that we know is not correct. But at the same time, I'm not in the mindset of self-defense when I'm taking a Tim Herron class, really. I'm more of like working on fundamentals and getting faster. And then I was just kind of thinking a thought process of taking Wayne Dobbs at TACCon, and he's actually slowing you down to where you're shooting by cadence of like, one round every half second, instead of like as many rounds as you can do as possible. So I really like this thought process of putting competition, self-defense, put it in one class, put it together, and make everybody understand we want to go as fast as we need to go, but there's also consequences if you start failing because, like as Tim says, you start shooting like an asshole, right? And I just like that thought process of like putting that together. So I do want to kind of get back to the course. Kent, explain to us, just kind of give us an overview of like your prerequisites, open carry, conceal, do you care, ammo, what do we need to bring to class? What's kind of just the overall, like, if I was about to take this class and you're going to send me an email like, hey, Andy, this is what you need to bring. So give us a breakdown of that.
Sure. I could read it to you, but I won't. We'll do it even easier than that. 1,000 rounds of 9mm or something dumb. If you have something dumb, that's fine. Or, bring that. That's cool. Or you just bring 1,000 rounds of 9mm. It'd be a lot easier for everybody. I'd like for you to have a half a dozen squared away magazines for your gun. I'd like for them to be the highest capacity possible that fits flush or decent for carry. I don't need stendos or anything crazy. I don't care if you want that, but like you don't need a 30 round mag or a 25 round mag or something silly for this course. That's unnecessary. I'd prefer that you show up in something that matches your application. I don't care if you conceal carry. I don't care if you duty carry. I don't care if you wear your competition rig. If that's your application, that's fine, right? Like, so if that's who you are and that's what you do, and it's disingenuous to be the other guy, that's fine. I do encourage students to wear gear that is conducive to a learning environment. So I'm not necessarily that guy who's like, well, honey, if you carry the 43X, you best be bringing it. Know what I mean? I'm not that guy. I don't see super value in beating students up on their gun and gear choices. You can get just as much out of my class with your full-size competitive rig as you can with your little carry gun. I might have the conversation with you about why are they so different or why should they be. Have you been introduced to my brothers and sisters in Christ Filster? Maybe we don't have to carry the dumb little guns, but whatever, that's cool. So you do you, boo-boo. That's my deal on the gear. I want you to be ready to be comfortable in the range. I want you to have your own food. I want you to have your own drink. I want you to have your own chair. Bring all the personal comforts, all the med kits, all the yes, all the things you should be bringing into gun class, right? Once you have something to write with, there's a 2-hour classroom portion in this course. This is an 18-hour, not a 16-hour class for that reason. So what we generally will do is we'll break for dinner on TD1, half an hour to go get something or have something catered in or whatever the facility allows for. And then we'll do a working dinner at the end of TD1 from, say, 5 to 7. That is the technology and the metrics and the tracking portion lecture set, if you will. And for some of you guys that are more well versed in competitive shooting, like I'm teaching folks how to use practice score to track their own performance in live fire drills and stuff like that. I'm teaching people how to use like Trident Stage Designer to design and lay out their own drill sets and their own stages, mini stages, stuff like that. Some of these technology pieces aren't going to be like super earth shattering to a guy who shoots Steel Challenge a couple weekends a year. But like if you've never competed and you've never seen some of this stuff before, then it's voodoo space magic. But more specifically, I'm just breaking out like, here's what I use, here's how I do it. And I use the class as an example. So I show them how the class was set up. Hey, here's the practice score for the class. Here's the Trident for the class. Here's all the stages and drills that are shot in the class laid out on Trident. Here's a freaking USB stick, or here's an email, by the way. You're going to get all this. This is something that needs to be highlighted. I give the entire POI to every student. Every single student gets the whole POI. You get the drill, you get what's written down, you get my instructor notes, you get what we're trying to deliver and what we're trying to capitalize on. And then you got a Trident thing with the actual stage or the actual layout or so none of this freaking, oh, what was that drill we did Saturday afternoon after the Gatorade break about? No, man, here's that drill. Is it always the exact same order of operations every time? Has there ever been a time where it rained and we did thing A before thing C or vice versa or whatever? Sure. But you're going to have the whole, at least if it was football, you'd have the playbook. It is open source. It is my intent for you to have and to use all that stuff. So I want you instructor folks out teaching with it. I want you using it. I very much am honored when folks do that stuff. But I need you to come to class prepared to ingest some academic information as well as not just range stuff. So it may not be a bad idea to have the iPad or have the computer. It may not be a bad idea to have some serious note-taking stuff just for a smidge. There's no death by PowerPoint here. I can't barely spell PowerPoint, so we don't belabor it or begrudge it too hard, but we go through it. And then we do a good solid recap on TD1 through the lens of like, hey, what does this playbook have to say about your question or your issue? Sir, ma'am, whatever it was that you put your hand up and you felt was so viable in that moment. Let's talk through it as a group. So we've got a 10-hour day on Saturday. So that's the other thing, right? Like you better strap in. You better be ready to get some work done. So hope that answered your preparedness question for the class.
No, it did. That the 6 mags. That is for me as a student. I'm like, yes. I no longer have to wait for
minimum.
Yes,
bring them all.
Okay,
but like 6 minimum.
I brought a egg crate just slammed full of them.
Yeah.
You get people in there, and I'm like, you really brought 2 mags to this $700 course, and I'm going to sit here and watch you stuff mags between.
Nope.
Put me on the line. Let me shoot some.
Harper's going to watch you stuff mags while you're back there stuffing mags, and we're all
right.
Like, sorry, nope, we ain't playing that game.
Nice. Yeah. I wanted to touch on, we were talking about randomness and competitive shooting, and gaining that, man. And that's something that I've always wanted. I'm curious. I would like to see some of the top level competitive shooters, and you just set up 3 or 4 stages, but it's blind for all those dudes. They don't see any targets that they're shooting until they get up there, and then the beep. That's, you know what I mean? That's the, just to see.
Frank, do you want to tell them or do you want me to tell them?
Welcome to Walmart.
That's a drill in the course. It is called Welcome to Walmart. It is a blind competitive stage. It is different for every competitor, for every shooter in the scenario. And it is a mindfuck. I'm very proud of this one. I'm not usually boastful or whatever, but this thing, yeah.
Dude, that's awesome.
It is a mindfuck. Like I've shot it several times. And it's always different. Right, it's never the same. That's one of the cool things is you take this class over and over and over again, and there's some variances there, and it's spicy.
Man, I've been chasing randomness and to add to training for 4 or 5 years now, because that's one of the things. It's like, and that's part of the deal with the RangeBuddy app is and this other thing that I'm working on. If you go up there, like we have students up there and you're shooting a drill, you're going to be shooting 2 rounds or 3 rounds. At the very least, you have an idea of how many rounds you're going to be shooting into the target. You have an idea of which targets you're going to be shooting. So the RangeBuddy app adds a little bit of randomness to that. You can have different color targets out there and it will randomly call out a command. You still kind of know how many shots you're going to put on there because you can choose if you want to shoot 1, 2, or 3. Or 15, however many it is. But this little guy is, I got a utility patent out that I'm waiting on to hear back. So it's got a provisional patent right now, but the brains of this thing will choose a random number of hits that are required. You can just set it up on your favorite cardboard target. It will detect the hits and then it will choose another random target for you. So that's a project that I've been working on for like 5 freaking years. Chasing that kind of deal, because as an instructor, I'd have students up there and I'm like, man, it's still your smart students are going to game it, right? And the students that don't know, they give themselves a little bit more of a challenge. But for me as a student, I kind of want to see how I would perform under the oh shit and figure it out type of deal, because you can do sub-second or sub 2 second draw to first shots all day, but we don't know how. It's hard to figure out on the square range what our mental processing time will actually have to be if I'm responding to an unknown stimulus and I'm engaging an unknown target. So that's freaking cool to hear that you got the welcome to Walmart drill.
Yeah, it's I'll give you the lead in. The welcome to Walmart gives something like this. You walk up. So first of all, a couple things. You cannot pull this drill off without a competent and capable AI, because this is an individual thing that 16 humans are going to go through it like one after the other, right? So there has to be some teaching happening while Jeremy and while Andy and while Frank are experiencing their own welcome to Walmart. Because otherwise, it's 15 people sitting around waiting to hear gunshots. And that sucks. Nobody wants that much downtime in the class, right? So we have to kind of two birds, one stone this. But basically what ends up happening is you walk up blind and you're walking with me. And I'm talking you through teaching points of the class. I'm saying, hey, man, listen, we talk through no shoots have names. We talk through consequences. We talk through all your skill sets. We know where your weak points are. We know where your strong points are by now. We have all the data on this stuff. If I happen to like, man, those transitions are on fire today, boy, or something like that, like something that I know I remember about that particular person, I'll bring it up in the conversation. I'll give them their lateral limits. I'll say, now remember, directionally, you may not send rounds that way, right? Everything else goes. I want you to solve the problems as you see fit. Are you ready? Stand by. And as they're turning around, they hear a beat. And, they get what they get. And we talk through all these points, right, of target discrimination and PID and what matters and what doesn't and why we should be wearing, what we should be shooting at. And it is amazing how many students just double every target. Pop, 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 right? And you like, you get to the end of the run, and you're like, I was fucking fire, bro. 12 seconds, down 0. You killed all the hostages, like expeditiously. That was incredible. Like, what are you talking about? Like, dude, you smoked obvious no shoots, not to mention the PID identifier no shoots that you may or may not have been picking up on. Like, you obviously walked into this with, I'm going to win. That was your mindset. And, you might have, and I'm not dogging anybody in particular or whatever, but you can pull practice score up on this class and you can, hey, so-and-so decently known dude has a killer time on this, but has like 11 no shoots.
Yeah. But sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no. And then just real quick. And then the opposite is like somebody you've never heard of did like perfectly, exactly as you'd expect them to, exactly as you'd want them to. And, her whole deal she came to me for was confidence. Right. Like, and I am thinking of an individual in this one, and Frank, you probably know who, but like, it's just like, damn, girl, this is exactly what we were looking for. Like, so it's, I'll give you this much. What we do on Welcome to Walmart is we kind of set it apart from the rest of the class as its like own stage, practice score wise. You can't really crown a top shot in class because Welcome to Walmart's different for everybody. Like, I don't mean to make it sound like a mushroom trip. Like, it's not like your own ayahuasca journey. It's just, it's not competitively fair. It's a different stage for everyone. So how do I, maybe I see Andy coming. I give him 48 non-threats and one clean target to shoot. And he identifies it right away on the turn and draw, and he goes pop, pop, and it's over. And it took him a second and a half or whatever. You get my point. So it's not totally, there's not competitive equity in it.
So does each student get a different drill, or is it one stage that everybody runs?
It's one stage. It's not a drill. It's a stage.
Or stage. Yeah.
It's a competitive. It's basically an IDPA stage with the identifiers, the non-threats, and the circumstances changed enough to make it a different experience
for each student.
Yes, so that student Andy can't go walking back to the group and go, "Oh, damn! Did you see the cop with the little kid and the gun or what?" Like, whatever craziness I've come up with, it's not the thing that they're all going to see. There's not like some boogeyman like that they know is coming or anything like that. That doesn't work.
It sounds like the round count is different as well.
Yeah. So, and the other thing we'll do, like, when I taught it up in Ohio for Scotty and them, the facility was such that like the students had to be so close to the range that I literally had to draw my gun and send a couple rounds just so dudes thought there was more shooting going on than there actually was sometimes. Because it got to the point where I had to grab the student and be like, pop, 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 pop. You know what I mean? And
solid.
Just kind of, thank you, honey. Yeah. Just kind of be like, you know, a little more surreptitious about what was going on up there. Because ideally, like at Apache, you have a whole nother hangout section somewhere else for the people to be doing other stuff. So all you hear in the background is indiscriminate gunfire while this is going on. And it doesn't take, I'll tell you what, it was a clusterfuck the first time I tried this, man. I'll tell you that much right now. Like this took like 11 hours. Like dudes were asleep. Like you have to get this to a finely tuned machine to the point where you can actually pull this off in a 45 or an hour segment. Like, and it's worth the effort if you can do it. And we can, as long as we have the right provisions from the range and stuff.
Yeah. One of the things I really enjoyed about it is, you know, there could be just some awesome lead slingers. I mean, just some really squared away, you know, super fast, super confident on a square range type dudes. And as soon as you give them, you know, just a little bit of leash to, okay, now you have to make decisions, right? And after going through, you know, the consequences, and you got Ken in there just playing with your head and everything. As soon as he says, you know, all right, you know, begin or whatever it may be, you just watch these super confident, just awesome shooters fall apart. I mean, just absolutely choking on that ego. And, you know, and it's not, you know, not knocking anybody down, but it shows you where some of those deficits are. You know, it's, okay, cool, man, you're a really squared away shooter, but you got some work right here. And it helps unveil some of that. Or, you know, the opposite. You have somebody who needs a little bit of confidence, and this class will absolutely do that to that person who needs some confidence. It's such a neat, it's such a neat experience. Again, I've taken it several times, and it's, you know, being able to see it, you know, for myself, you know, in different lights, and being able to see it as Ken had mentioned before, you know, having another student come in that just needed a little bit of confidence, and they slayed it. I mean, they just absolutely killed it. You know, far exceeded, you know, not only their expectations, but the expectations of, you know, others around them. And but at the same time, you have these guys who come into it really cocky. Oh, wow, I got this, you know, no sweat. I'm going to burn this down. And they come, you know, fourth, fifth, sixth, you know, at the very back of the class, because their ego got in the way, and, you know, they weren't able to really digest what Kent was throwing down. So, like I said, it's, for me, it's such a good class. Like I really, really, really enjoy it.
Ken, I want to pick your mind on that drill specifically a little bit more, and then, you know, feel free to tell me that I'd have to show up to class to figure this out. And it's really just about the target layout, because one of the things that, for me, it's, you know, when we're looking at shoot and no shoot drills, it's typically hand spray painted or gun. And one of the drills that I like to run is I will write letters, G, and different letters on there. And then for one drill, big uppercase G is a good guy, lowercase g is a gun. And then a few drills later, or a few iterations later, big G is a gun, little g is a good guy. So they're having to think. So what are you using to distinguish your shoot and no shoot targets? And are your no shoot targets, do you do the USPSA thing and make them the white side, or are they all targets all facing the same way?
So I've taught the class on IDPA and USPSA targets. That's largely dependent on whatever great deal I got on mine on targets that week or that month. A big thing that has to be figured out here is what logistical resources the range that I'm operating on has at my disposal. Like, how crazy can I go? In terms of, like, I'll give you one hint. Don't tell me your wife or your kid's name or something, because I'm gonna write that shit on a target. Like, I promise you I'm going to do that. I promise you I'm going to write somebody's name on a target for sure. I'm going to write words and letters and phrases on a target. And I'm going to stand there. The thing is like at the end of an array. Now we're back in. We're facing the bay. You're done. You ran your stage. I'm like, hey man, can you tell me what some of the words were written on those targets? There's fucking words on the target. Yeah, bro. There was words like, dude, what did you pick up from what did you see? What did you process? Because first of all, let's be real. My handwriting is like third grader at best. So like, there ought to be a moment of like sights on. What the? That's like, there should definitely be a little of that. And sometimes there is, and sometimes there isn't. T-shirts are great. Blue guns are great. Any kind like baseball caps are cool. It doesn't take much. A duffel bag through a random shit in your truck, and you can get a long way. If you're wondering where this came from, by the way, credit where credit's due. I've got a guy AIing for me by the name of Hirsch Gooden, and Hirsch was the number 2 man for Skip Gokenhauer in the National Tactical Invitational for about 25 years. So I today am the director of training at West Shore at the range that took place at. So I got a dude who's been figuring out target identifiers for 20 years. So if you think this was all my brainchild, it was me going, here's my thing that I came up with, and him going, see some shit. And like between us, now it's really cool. But it's West Shore Sportsman's IDPA of days of old, National Tactical Invitational, photos on targets, words on targets, couple different things. It's different every time, but it's really the same duffel bag of tricks. It just depends on what comes out.
Is that ever going to come back, the National Tactical Invitational?
Man. So I'm in no place to speak for it, right? Green Mountain Defense never had any part in it. Gentleman who's my employee today did at one time, but like the facility's there. All it takes is about 30 volunteers. Rock, paper, scissors, somebody, please. I'm in. I'll do it. I'll bring all my resources to bear, but that ain't enough.
Yeah.
You can never do it like those guys did it. And not to be too like overly nostalgic or whatever, but today, the level of workload and effort that they put in, you think it's hard being an IDPA match director or a USPSA match director or whatever? Try managing a staff of like 30 volunteers.
Yeah.
And shutting the whole facility down. Every inch of West Shore Sportsman's was shut down for like 10 days for that thing.
It was force on force, correct?
There was force on force. There was lectures. It was TACCon, but for force on force.
Andy, I don't know because this was, I don't know when they shut it down, but I remember,
early 2000s, like 06 was the last one, 04.
Yeah, man. It was, and they have a bunch of role players and they just say, hey, here's what you're doing. And you walk through town and you got to figure it out.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So,
Kent was talking about, if you better not let me find the name of your loved one or something like that. You want to see a grown man just absolutely break down? Kent will go through and again, if he finds out, go through and write, your loved one's name on a no shoot, and then have them run through a stage, something like that, and they will undoubtedly shoot the no shoot, right? That has their loved one's name on it. That I've personally seen grown ass man just put his stuff up, done for the day. There's just put it down, back it up. Not that was the goal. Yes,
it's not the intent.
That's not the intent, but it gets you thinking about it, right? And it just happened that way.
The actual intent of that was more about seeing if I could get people to pause long enough to recognize their own, like, if there's random writing, fine. But anytime I see the word James, I'm like, oh, that's my boy. Like,
right.
A dude, James is 4. A dude emailed me named James, and I was like, oh, James emailed Daddy. Nah, some dude from you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So as a parent, you'll key in on your own kid's name, or you key in on your spouse's name, or you'll key in on a word that you see written often. And it'll cause some momentary hesitancy of like identification.
Yeah, get
which
you to stop and
there
think.
should be if we're sending lead all over God's creation for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, you know, are we doing that? Anyway, I could talk about walking to Walmart for 11 hours. So we better, like, y'all better ask some.
Well, what are some other? Go ahead, Andy.
I was going to say, you know, Jeremy and I recently did a private one-on-one with two students, a son and his 80-year-old father. And so
Cool.
I was working with the 80-year-old father. He's never drawn from appendix before ever in his life, but they came with a holster, gun, and everything all set up. So while I'm working with him, Jeremy's over working with the son, who was saying, man, 1.5 second draw to first shot is like ridiculously. I could never get that done, right? And Jeremy's got him running 1.2s, 1.3s. I'm working with the 80-year-old father, and we have 2-inch dots. There's some on the high, some low. I got 2 different targets. And so basically what I'm doing is I'm having him draw safely at speed to give me 1 shot. And then we moved into, okay, now give me bottom 2-inch circle, top 2-inch circle, and then move and transition, give me 2 rounds to the left side. That's his buddy. And so he started doing it, and he was getting faster and faster. And he started missing. And I said, well, remember, I don't want you just to go fast. I want you to think about what you're doing before you go fast. You got to do all the non-shooting stuff fast, right? Credit from Tim. But at the same time, if you have a really small target that you have to hit, me drawing and just pumping a round out and then moving to the next target, is that going to do any good, right? And so even this older gentleman was like thinking about it. I'm like, take the time you need to take to make sure that you're getting your shots on target, but go as fast as you can. And he's like, okay, I see where you're getting here. And so we actually worked on the throttle control, just a very elementary style throttle control with a thought process in mind of like, hey, you only have a small target to hit. Everything else, he's behind a wall. He has armor on. All you see is his eyeball, whatever it may be. Take the time to get your shot, but you have to do everything else faster, right? Does that make sense? But kind of the point of this whole deal is the best courses that I've been to are not the one where you're just shooting range drills, right? It's where you're having a thought process of you have to think about what you're doing, right? Before you're just pressing a trigger. Anybody can go and do a drill and just press a trigger, right? So I like the thought of putting in things that mean something to someone on a stage, like you mentioned, having the loved one's name, whatever it may be. So it's really thought-provoking. Jeremy and I had like a side conversation going on DM. It's like, hey, dude, this is like stupid smart, right? So credit to you guys for coming up with these things. So I guess the bigger question is now, once we've talked about welcome to Walmart, what's left? Like for us, I think we've sat on this for a good part of our podcast just because I've never heard of anything like this. So what's left?
So the other, like, we talk no shoots have names. We talk about stages and drills and competitive stuff. We talk about your metrics, what you should be able to do. The thing we get a lot more work done than people might realize is precision pistol shooting on B8s. Except I've kind of got a little bit of a different thing to that too. Our everybody needs their drill, right? Like, you know, every guy's got their standards, their patch, their this, their that. Mine is called Consequences, and it's been a drill of the month on a couple of these Facebook groups and stuff recently, but I'll break it down real simple for you. You're on the 20-yard line and you're shooting a B8. There's 2 of them, bottom and a top. You shoot the bottom B8 30 times. Slow fire. Slow fire. Students, you have the next 10 minutes to put 30 rounds into the bottom B8. You may begin. That's your whole command sequence. That's it, right? Bottom B8, 30 rounds. That bitch better be pretty close to a 300, right? Like 20 yards. We ought to be keeping them all black for sure, and we ought to be X-ring. God damn it, X-ring. God damn it. I could see floating 1 or 2 out of black, but there should not be a ton of 9 rings and 8 rings in that bottom B8 sequence. After your 30 rounds, I got a timer out. Ladies and gentlemen, I need 10 rounds in your pistol. You have the next 25 seconds to shoot 10 rounds into the top B8. This will be timed individually. Frank, are you ready? stand by. That is your whole sequencing, right? And Frank ain't line left or line right. He ain't student 1 and he ain't student 16. I'm walking to number 3 and number 7 and number 6 and number 1 and, you know, up and down the line randomly. 25 seconds. 25-second timer, and you're, you know, up out of your rig 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in 25 seconds, which is just enough time to hang yourself with, as it turns out. You know, there's plenty of people who could shoot a speed bull faster in 25 seconds. But that cadencing of like, oh shit, I got all the time in the world. No, you don't. You best not have a malfunction. You best not, you know, have a bad trigger press and abort something. You bet, like, you know, 25 seconds is just enough time to be dangerous. And we're shooting these. We're regularly demoing this in the 395 or higher. So if you run this up, we're shooting this at, you know, 98, 99 percentiles, and we got students shooting this at above 90, like often, right? So here's the deal: if you go over your 25, you're done for, right? And we talk consequences. So every round in the white, you better go up there with your Sharpie and you better write somebody's name next to it. No, I'm not fucking kidding. Go up there and write somebody's name next to that shit. Let's go. Like, that's, you know, that's the cadence and vocal aggression you get from me. You don't have to scream at people, as it turns out. You just talk to them and just, hey man, get up there, write a name, please. Thank you. Let's go. It is what's the word? It's a humbling, but also a solid exercise in integrity and honesty when a GMD instructor puts one in that fucking white, because we will call the range cold and we will jog to that shit, and you will watch us write that thing. Like, I'll if I bomb me a demo and white it up bad, everybody on me, watch this. Watch me write my kid's name and shit. Like, we ain't holier than thou or whatever. You fuck it up, you fuck it up. You go up there and own that shit for everybody. And then there's no, you know, you walk up to it, you score it, you look at the name, you don't go, no, it's your kid, right? Like, that's not the point. That's not what we do. We're asking you to add some level of ownership to it beyond just the, oh geez, I dropped one, or oh shuck, you choked, so bullshit. Like, that ain't it. It's, get up there and own it. So we shoot consequences for score, and if you're doing the math on this, you got 400 possible points on B8. We're shooting it for X count and score, right? And we have numerous students in the high 390s on practice score, like in front of 15 other humans. So that's yeah, hell yeah. You had the title there for a while. You did,
yeah, I think Scotty took it from you, right?
Scotty Cronin took it from me out of Ohio. Yeah. Yes, he certainly did. But yeah, I mean, guys and girls are out shooting this. You know, so we just went, if you follow the ebb and flow of the class, we just went from gas pedal to 30-round slow fire, back to medium gas pedal, and now we're going to get out on the stage and compete. Right? So there's a lot of like throttle, brain, throttle, brain, throttle, brain, throttle, brain. And if you're not, you know, if your brain isn't engaged with the throttle, that's the point of class where you'll come apart. And, you know, it's different for everybody. So
where do you think this the mindset, the perspective to put this much focus and emphasis on getting your students to really internalize the consequences of pulling the trigger when you shouldn't have pulled the trigger? And the reason I ask is it's a unique trait, right? It's a unique characteristic. It's not something that we hear national level instructors. Every time I say that, it sounds super disrespectful, right? I think in a couple of years, it's you know what I mean. Not that you're not that deal, you know what I mean. But it's you have all these.
God damn it! I've taught in 2 states. I'd make it.
Good, well, good, yeah, national, right? But it's not something that you hear. I haven't heard it, right? And it's one of those things where it's, you know, when I first got in, I was naive. I had big eyes for some instructors, and then I realized I should train with like two instructors, and now that list is growing. But it's still I think a perspective and an angle that you're taking that's pretty unique to you and Green Mountain Defense. And what do you kind of credit that to?
It's not a unique angle at all. It's a unique thing to sprinkle into an otherwise performance shooting class. You can go take a pistol class with Bill Rapier right now, and you'll hear much the same thing in terms of consequences and cold bore shots and all that kind of stuff. You won't see Mr. Rapier, at least not in the several times I've hosted him, and I've yet to see Bill Rapier do a stage after talking cold bore shots. Rapier from Amtac is famous for talking about his cold bore shot. The first shot you fired today is probably the most important. And my question to you is, how confident are you in your capability to do it? And he puts a target out in Texas, and he has his students one-on-one draw to the target, but he tells them they can go anywhere on the range to do it. Not so hey, Kent, it's your turn. Hey, so-and-so, it's your turn. And every once in a while, you'll see a dude who stands at the 25 and just draws his pistol and puts one in the face. But more often than not, you'll see people try to get real close to that son of a bitch before they send one. Right? So, I am by no means the only guy or gal saying stuff like that. Tatiana Whitlock is another great example of a person who's using mental management to talk through the consequences of pistol shooting. So is Pressburg. I might be the only person doing it in such an ebb and flow as I am doing it, perhaps. Right? That might be a thing that's different for me. But in terms of there's plenty of performance pistol classes that are very good. And there's plenty of people who are doing a very good job of putting a high level of emphasis on where those rounds should be. DeFore is a great example of that. But then going, hey, let's do a little of both. Where that came from in me is my own personal demons as a shooter. Because I was forever that dude who was like, well, this one matters, so I'm going to put the emphasis on it. These other 20 don't fucking matter, but this one does somehow. You're in the middle of a stage and you're just ghost ringing, going pop, 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 and then somehow the steel that's going to move the activator is the one that matters. What? Can't you dumbass? You just shot 17 shots. Where are the rest of them? Right? So I was either that dude or I was the bubble, 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 bubble. And there's a shot, and there's a shot, and someday we'll be done. And unfortunately, I was just maybe I need to be both dudes. So there was this I need to focus on and put effort into trying to be both dudes. And that's how we arrived at it. So
no, that makes sense.
I can hugely relate to that too, of being the super slow guy, super precision, want to make sure you hit every A zone, and then it's everybody else is waiting on you, and they're like, dude, how long is it going to take you to finish the stage? And then you run out there, it's I'm going to let the wheels fall off, and you let the wheels fall off, and then you're missing and hitting every no shoot and every deep delta you can find, and it's just trash. And that's the same way of when I got involved with Tim, of I've got to learn how to put this together because I can't. It's either this or it's this, and there's no put together in the middle. So I recognize with that. How much does the class cost?
Anywhere from $500 to $600, depending on where it's being hosted.
How many do you do a year for this specific course?
I've done 4 of them this past year. Biggest we've done 6 in 1 year. My business is primarily focused on private lessons. This is not a come into your city, your neck of the woods, your neighborhood, your town every weekend. We got Jedi for that. Let Jedi go to every city on the planet. God bless them, right? If folks want it, I'll bring it to them. But I'm not out here trying to, be at every range doing it every single weekend. It's something I really enjoy doing, but I'll be quite honest with you. I don't know that the curriculum is one of those things where it's universally applicable to every person with a pistol. You got to be able to hang. You got to be able to run your gun. That's not some elitist thing. It's just Green Mountain defensive pistol metric should not be the first place you come for a pistol class. Like, we need to be honest with ourselves. Now, if you want something else from us, we do handgun fundamentals. We do those other things, and we do considerably more of those things regionally and locally. But this class, my student base warrants, 6 a year at max. If I'm going to travel with it, great. Then, if you tell me you got 6, 8, 10, 12 people together and I need to sell the rest, then that's reasonable. But if you tell me you and your buddy want it and I got to find another 12 of them that do, I'm not sure I'm flying to Sarasota or wherever to try and figure it out.
Yeah. Frank, where do you think this course should fall on a student's continuum training? From your perspective.
I would say after, so like, on the pistol performance scale, you want to say, as Ken had already said, you need to be able to run your gun, right? So you need to be like very confident with, drawing from a holster, and you're very confident with being able to, place shots and with accuracy, maybe not necessarily precision. I think Kent could absolutely help you with precision, but with some accuracy, right? You need to be able to hit what you're shooting at. And you need to be competent with that. So if you can competently keep your gun running, right? If with a level of automaticity, you can, tap rack or do whatever you need to do just to keep the gun running and, not really have to think about it. I think it's time for you to take that class, take Ken's class. Before that, I'm not saying you couldn't take the class, because I've personally seen students who were maybe right at that edge where maybe not, maybe they may be dragging the class down a little bit, but definitely be comfortable with drawing from a holster. Definitely need to be able to be comfortable with, keeping the gun running, keeping it fed. So like I said, there needs to be a little bit of, learned skills there, but definitely not, a green, I just got this today and let me run this today kind of thing. It's definitely a thinking course, and you need to have that bandwidth of, okay, I know how to keep this running without thinking about it, so I can focus on, what Kent is laying down here.
I was going to ask you that, Kent. Have you had a student that probably should not have been in this class? And if yes, what'd you do about it?
Not for very long. That's just not gonna. It's not a thing. So, Green Mountain Defense has a no shit refund policy. Like, for one thing, if you're not ready, if it ain't the thing for you, whatever. I don't know what else to tell you. I'll teach my ass off. I'll make any accommodation I can. My AIs will have you dry firing the whole thing if you want to stay for it. We'll do anything possible under the sun to foster learning, but I will not have you fuck it up and hurt somebody on my right. I will not have it. It's just, I ain't Jesus, and I got to ask him for help. So I got to do everything I can as it is to make sure nobody gets burned up. My $600 take on your ticket is not worth the rest of my life, your life, their life, or anything else. And, if this was Walmart, since we keep stealing their name for our drills, we might as well steal their name for our T-shirts. Like those 2,728,000 days since an accident, right? Ain't never happened. We ain't never had one. Never in all the private lessons. And we're not like some regionally little small train. Like, we teach a shitload of privates. We teach a lot of individual. We keep 3 guys on a range teaching pretty frequently. So for us to have never had a round go into another human and it wasn't supposed to is, quite frankly, like, thank you, Jesus. And I hate to say this, but if you don't think, like, tomorrow's the day. Like, if your mindset isn't that it's going to happen on the next lesson or at the next class or whatever, you're fucked up. You need to get out of the game, because, like, it's coming. It's absolutely coming for you, right? So if you're the person who's scaring me in class, like, we got to do something about it. We just can't have it. So dry fire, blue guns, modified drill sets, whatever has to happen. But we're going to have a, hey, Jeremy, sir, listen, I think by now, like, the look on your face says it all. Like, are you all right, bro? Yeah. Okay. Well, listen, but pretty well certain that we've come to an impasse here. I'm going to ask you to take 10 good solid minutes, sit down, drink some water, and think. While you're doing that, I'm going to do the same thing. And here before the next break, we're going to come up with a plan as to how to get you as involved as possible. If that plan isn't right for you and you don't feel good about it, man, I'd have your refund processed before you leave the premises, right? And if you're not cool with that, then I can give you private lessons at another date and time, or like whatever the customer servicey things are that need to happen. But if there's 14 or 15 other humans who deserve my fullest attention right now and my team's fullest attention, you can't be so far apart from their skill set that like I have to devote one AI just to you. That's not reasonable. That takes us outside of our plan parameters for our sake. Like, what's an AI for, right? He's there to make sure I don't fuck it up. Like let's be real. So if I'm gonna have Frank AI for me, and Mr. Smith requires 2 of Frank's hands and all Frank's eyes and 100% of Frank's brain, I've just taken what was supposed to be a set of eyes for the whole range and I put them on one dude all weekend. That's a recipe for bad things to happen, I think.
That makes sense. Frank, speaking of students, what did your peers look like in the course? Not necessarily the one where it was, you and your 9 buddies in an RV, but one of the other times that you took the class. What were some of those other students look like? Are they primarily coming from a competitive background?
It was a healthy mix.
Training? Are there a bunch of training junkies in there? Because Andy will attest to this. He trains more than I do, but it's a small group of folks that kind of.
Yeah, there can be. So usually the classes that I'm involved in, especially with Kent, it's a lot of the cadre. Like it's a lot of people it's a lot of our students, there's a lot of people that we've trained with before, that we've recommended classes to, things like that. But I think it's a healthy mix. I think there's a healthy mix of there are going to be certificate hogs, literally everywhere you go. And so if they hear, hey, I get a certificate by taking this class, those guys are going to be there and they're going to show up with their, race rigs and the whole 9 yards, whatever. They're going to get what they're going to get out of the course. But I have also seen the gambit of, these are people who are taking it that are, serious, everyday carrier type focus, self-defense focus, all the way through quite literally, I've seen female students that have taken the class who, they had a skill set, right? They knew how to keep their gun running, but they just didn't have confidence. They're like, I don't know if this is class for me. I don't know. There's some hesitation there. And I've seen them slay the class. So I've seen, like I said, the gambit of, the race guys, the training junkies, the certificate hogs, all the way through the, those students who they need a little bit of a pick me up, that had those underlying skills, right? That had that foundation already there. So that I think I've witnessed a healthy mix of all of that.
Man, when you were talking about having students show up and needed the confidence piece and they slayed the course, that kind of just sparked a question in me, and I wanted to Kent get your idea on this. What makes a student successful in this course?
An open mind and a very, very, very in check ego. I.e., a female student who's looking for confidence, right? First of all, dudes, I hate to tell you this, chicks are out shooting us left and right like every 11 seconds. So we just need to own this and just realize that this is a thing. But that energy of that little bit of feminine energy of like, I guess I'll give it a shot. Like we could use a little more of that sometimes, because some of these guys are like, I shall dominate this with my masculine awesomeness, bro. And like some of these dudes get a little too far into their egos, self-included. Basically, this whole class was just, how do I fix myself, right? So like, as it turns out, it just happens to work for other like-minded humans. But I mean, man, you give me somebody who needs their confidence built up, and who wants some skill pulled out of them. I'm fucking there. That's what I'm here for. That's what this business exists for, right? So that was our foundation. That's where we started. That's who we are. Whoever you are, you have the right to be out here doing this. You do not deserve to be victimized. Here we are. Let's go. How can we help? Right. So that's the energy behind it. And not to be, I'm terrible with this self-promotional shit, but we're good at that. God damn it. My guys are phenomenal at it. In some ways better than I am at it. Like the level of bringing people up around us it just becomes contagious because I mean, I've got Justin and Hirsch out there who are two completely opposite men, both very valuable, but they couldn't be more different people. And myself and we're all just like, I can't tell if it's a stand-up comedy actor in a gun class with a preacher sometimes, but we're getting what we can get out of people. That's the most rewarding part. So yeah, man, absolutely. Yeah. Open mind, small ego.
Yeah, and I mean, and I can mirror that. So, I've taken that class again. I've said it several times, and every time has been different for me. So I remember the very first time taking class, dude. I swallowed some humble pie, 100%. Like I did not do great. I discovered some things I really need to work on, so I worked on them. And then the next time around, I did a little bit better, and then the next time around, I did a whole lot better. Which just happened to be the time Harper was there. But there's there's a piece of that goes, okay, well, it's always different, right? There's always something that's added. There's the shooting course, the stage is always a little different. Like the same concepts maybe or similar concepts, but there's always something that really pushes you. And again, knowing what I know now as far as the course, if I go into saying, I am going to do what I'm going to do, I'm either going to just have confidence and be able to rock this, or maybe I woke up on the wrong side of the bed that day, whatever it may be. Having that open mind and having that ability to maybe even let that ego be bruised a little bit, or a lot of it, that's going to help you in the class 100%. So if you can realize, okay, I made a mistake here, I am never going to make that same mistake ever again, and like build off of that, by the end of the class, you're either walking on cloud nine, or if you went into it with a big ego, you're going to be hurt and licking your wounds, but you need, with the knowledge of you need to do better next time, right? You need to, these are things that you need to work on. These are things that you need to push yourself on. And Kent gives you the tools on how to do that. It's not one of these, beat you up. Oh, you suck. Go home and know how much you suck. It's okay. We found some weaknesses here. This is my recommendation on how you're going to fix those weaknesses. Here is everything that you need to fix those weaknesses. And like he had said at the beginning of the class, he gives you the POI, gives you everything. I personally have, a dry fire plan that Kent wrote up just for me for working on those weaknesses after, one class I've taken with him. Again, worth his weight in gold. And he can vouch for that. He would do that for any of his students, any of his, private students, whatever it may be. That is what has made me a more competent shooter, over time, just figuring out what those weaknesses are and then figuring out how to fix them and continuing and pressing through with that.
I think it's appropriate to make a distinction between ego and confidence. There's nothing wrong with some confidence. There's nothing wrong with knowing what the hell you can do. But if you come into a learning experience with the attitude that like, shit, I got this. Like when we talk about this being a blend of competitive and defensive shooting, where there's less and less distinctions every day, it seems, because there shouldn't have been in the first place, as it turns out. But what we end up with is a guy who comes out who's like, shit, if this was a local match, I would smoke these motherfuckers. All right, cool. This ain't a local match, and You're not competing against them. You're kind of competing against you. And let's see where you're maybe out shooting your headlights a little bit. See if we can find it. Maybe it ain't there. Maybe you're amazing. Maybe I should be taking your course. But I'm pretty damn well sure that all of us, every one of us, name any amazing shooter you can think of, that dude has overshot their headlights or that girl's overshot her headlight. I promise you. Promise. Let's find it. It's out there somewhere. Let's just go find it. So I'm not anti-confidence. No, I did want to point that out.
I think there's a huge distinction between confidence and ego, and a lot of people get that muddled between the two, and they don't know how to separate it, right? And so I totally agree with you there. Kent, where can we find you?
www.greenmountaindefense.com. Facebook, internets. Next class is October 21st. Almost Down Fishing Game up here about an hour northwest of us for a handgun fundamentals. If you would like to be in the fall in a beautiful indoor range, learning how to run that handgun you just bought, this is your place. $350, $400, something like that for a 16-hour handgun fundamentals class. It is not the class we are talking about this evening. It is, hello, nice to meet you. What did you buy? Let's figure out how to use it. So
that's awesome. When do you have a schedule for the next defensive pistol metrics for 2024 or
2024's first defensive pistol metrics is not scheduled yet, but it will be here at the home range, and it will be in March. I can't tell you it's one of 3 weekends in March, but it'll be out. 2024 schedule will be here posted pretty much before the end of September. Here in the next 15 days, that should all be ironed out. I'm in an interesting position. I'm the director of training for a facility as a volunteer board member of a gun club. And I'm one of the guys who teaches at the gun club. So I'm trying to make sure everybody else gets all their slots and all their calendaring done first, and then I'll take what's left. Because I would never want to be in a position where somebody was thinking I was giving myself like all the perfect weekends and all the shit and then leaving them scraps. So as long as I do the volunteer gig at the home range, the schedule's always everybody else first and then me. So that's why there's a little nebulism there, but
that integrity.
What did you say, Jeremy?
The integrity, huh? Life would be so much easier without it.
You're muted.
Yeah.
At a local range, and like there's a good old boys club going on, and nobody can get their shit done. And having been that guy when I'm on the other side of it, I don't want to put somebody in that spot. That's all.
That's cool.
Yeah, that is cool. So tell me, one last question I have for you real quick, Kent. Tell me about the fuck cancer on your website. I was kind of perusing through. I saw it there on the bottom of your page, and I'd like you to maybe share that and tell us about it. Did I lose you?
Ken is having technical difficulties.
Waiting on Ken.
Everything you said went in one AirPod and out the other.
Oh, okay.
You're back.
So this
everything you just said just went. I mean, it was amazing. Your mouth was moving, and I was like, this is just like gun class. My ego got in the way, and I can't hear shit. It's perfect.
I was about to ask you, is burnt almonds or burnt toast in your nose right now? Like, what's going on here?
Sorry. I did have a stroke. My computer had a stroke. I did not. I absolutely smell toast. It's fine. Everything's fine.
Okay.
Did I look entirely goofy while I was like, I don't understand. Somebody please help me with my computer.
Yeah. So I guess we'll start that over again.
I'm so sorry, bro. Right. You know what? You told me an hour and a half, and goddamn it, I've been a professional for an hour and a half. I would like to point that I've been so good. I have no idea how good.
That's true.
Yeah.
I've been such a professional.
4 minutes over, and it's dead.
Please continue, Mr. Smurf. You have my full and undivided attention.
Okay, so I was perusing through your website earlier as you were talking, and I kind of went through and I saw the fuck cancer on the bottom. Click the link, and I'd like you to talk a little bit about that. What's the meaning behind it? And then finally, there's something on there that you guys are trying to reach a goal, and something's going to happen. I want to know what the goal number is too, by the way. So tell us a little more about it.
So the website often gets edited in service of the podcast. So on the Sling and Lead podcast, we do T-shirts and we do charitable giving on our podcast. So every dollar our podcast makes goes somewhere charity-wise, right? As you guys as podcaster knows, that's like all $11 a month or whatever. But like, you know, but somebody gets some charity money every once in a while. So Mr. TC Fuller is going to have to be less clothed than you might like him to be if we reach one of those little goals on the website. And you know, the cancer thing was just because we had a person on the podcast who you know, was their charity of choice was cancer. We've got our buddy Cameron Hayes who lost a leg. You know, guys served how many tours overseas and busted his ass for us. Comes home and loses a leg on a motorcycle. So our, you know, we've got the Cam's ass kicking contest thing going on right now. We're again professional, right? Like our podcast is a little bit less couth than this one, I must admit. Like we got a picture of our buddy like in an IHOP and he's got one leg, and you know, we've got all these different, you know, and we're all we're trying to do is help him and his wife. And we're, you know, he's doing jujitsu, and we're talking about how nobody could get him in a left ankle lock, and like, you know, it's way too much dad humor and way too much whatever. But the truth is, every year TJ and I cut a check for a few grand to a couple different charities, and it's pretty cool to be able to give back a little and do something like that. Thank you to the listener for whoever keeps helping us reach all those goals. I think honestly, Frank's just buying all the t-shirts and filling buses with all the t-shirts. But if you follow our podcast, you can, the website has links to the podcast and stuff on it, and you can get the Teespring and you can buy the charity t-shirts, and you can certainly go listen and watch. That's all on YouTube, and it's all on Apple and, you know, all those other Spotify. There's like Joe Rogan and then these guys and then a bunch of ladies talking about murders and then like a whole bunch of other shit and then us somewhere way down. Your finger will get broke scrolling until you find us going down. But like we're down there somewhere. So go find us. It's fun.
We're below that. So, you know, we can relate. So speaking of Jeremy, myself here, we're going to look onto your website there. And I think we're going to grab a couple t-shirts and give them away to a couple of our listeners here that's kind of on a regular basis or something like that. We'll work something out. So I just think it's an important kind of cool thing that you guys are doing, and I appreciate that. So Jeremy,
thanks, man.
The last last kind of question, it's the worst question to ask, I think, because it's a super lazy question. But one of the concerns that I always have jumping off of these interviews is whether or not we gave the course or the instructor or the company enough its due respect and time. But is there anything that we should have talked about that we didn't talk about? Anything that you'd like to mention to wrap it up?
No, man, I just want to say how honored I am for the time and the effort here. And it's not lost on me that three dudes took an hour and a half to talk about my company tonight. And Frank, I had no idea you continue to amaze me in our friendship and your willingness to go out and do cool stuff and involve as many of us as you possibly can in the meantime. So for you to hit me up and tell me that you nominated me for this or whatever, you had to pay a sultan somewhere in Arabia or God knows what you had to do to arrange this. I have no idea what these guys made you go through, but pretty cool of you to be willing to do that. Honestly, I'm just humbled anybody gives you shit at all, right? It's really cool to have this as an opportunity, and we're out here doing good work. So to see it get recognized, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up how much effort my wife and how much effort my staff puts into this. So what you really ought to do is call me up. You ought to take a private lesson with Hirsch Gooden or Justin Payne, because you'll get like easily some of the best firearms instruction in central Pennsylvania. And like, I'm still here, right? So those dudes are out there slaying it. Go see those guys. There would be no GMD if it wasn't for those dudes, and there would be no Kent if it wasn't for Mrs. Hauer. So like, we should acknowledge that there's a whole team thing going on here. The only thing I would say is what doesn't get its due is I just as soon, if I'd have thought better of this, I would have just had them come here and not even been on it myself. But that's the only thing I'm remiss in, or if I didn't do a good enough job spreading credit around, that's what was deserved and earned by those folks. So, you know, that's what I got for you on that.
No, it was awesome, man. It was a great conversation. You know, it's I can see very early on in the conversation, I can see why Frank was adamant and you know, I think it was, he had mentioned it during the episode, and then in the post show we were talking about it again. It was just you know, for me that's one of the I guess unspoken benefits. I think it's not unspoken because I talk about it now. Is, you know, when I first started doing the firearms thing and then the firearms training thing, there were a whole bunch of people that I wanted to train with, and a lot of those folks on that list were selling snake oil. So that list got real small, and then it's really started to grow over the last few years. And it's through these a lot of that is through these conversations that we're having with students and instructors, and seeing these instructors recommending the same and other instructors that, you know, I said it before, you know, we're going to look back and we're going to say, oh, it was, you know, the GMD, that was an overnight success. And it's like, no, man, we've been doing this for 15, 20 years now. You're just now getting your head screwed on right to seek out the training that is actually valuable. And maybe you went out and you bought the snake oil course and you learned a hard lesson. And now you're really seeking out the reputable instructors that deserve people's time and energy and money. So for me, that's cool because I'm actually able to, you know, my list is growing again. And it's, you know, I told Andy, I was like, dude, this is a class I want to take. So I definitely want to get out there in 2024. Because it is, you hit on a lot of stuff that really, I don't want to say speak in my language because I don't want to, you know, kind of attach myself to everything that you've done and you're doing, but it's one of those things where I love the performance pistol stuff. My lane is the defensive shooting thing, and it's cool to see how well those two worlds are kind of being merged together at Green Mountain Defense, especially in the defensive pistol metrics course. Man, it's cool. It's cool to see. So. And then Frank, dude, you anytime you want to come back, you got a standing invitation to the show anytime, dude. Like you, when we had you on before, I'm like, man, this dude is doing a better job of this shit than I am, hands down. So I definitely appreciate you carrying the conversation and adding the value and the insight, dude, because it's awesome, man. So thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Over my podcast, it gets a lot better. I know that. So let's just let him. He'll be on every podcast. Shit, if you guys want an after action report of every class Frank's been to, you could do a whole Frank series, and that'll get you through the next 11 years if you do 12 episodes a year or whatever.
I don't know about 11 years, but yeah,
we're back to weekly now. We got it. We took a week off, but yeah, we are. But you know, it's podcasting. It's a labor of love. You know, we do it for like $12 a month and income and. You know, the web hosting and all that stuff. So, Andy, back to you, buddy, to get us out of this thing.
I'm glad you guys continue to talk a while because I was buying one of the T-shirts off of the website, so I grabbed one of the original Gunfighter T-shirts for myself. So, yeah. Anyway, just wanted to say thank you guys for coming on as usual. We appreciate this. Another great podcast, another great show. It seems like more and more as we have guests on, Jeremy and I are like, oh, we need to take this one. Oh, we need to take this one. I really want to do this one. So you've been added to the bucket list, Kent. So we appreciate your time. And Frank, yeah, absolutely. You know, having you on has been a great way to keep our podcast going, I guess I should say, because there are times where Jeremy and we're socially awkward. That's one thing about both of us. Like my wife laughs because, so let me tell you a little story about me. My mom loves to talk. And so as a little kid, she would drag me like 2 hours away to go see Aunt Betty, who's 65 years old, who has a, 12-inch TV, black and white, and a piano. And they would sit at the table and drink coffee for hours and hours on end while I'm just literally just dying in my chair, like literally wishing that, something would hit the house so I could just die and be done with it. So I've always been that way of like, I don't really have a way to communicate sometimes with people because I'm just awkward. Right. So it's great to have somebody like Frank just to come on and help and just kind of continue the conversation. And my wife always makes fun of me and she's like, yeah, your mom messed you up. And I'm like, yeah, she did. So, I don't even know how I'm on a podcast. Sometimes the best advantage for me is I just get to sit here and listen as just listening to everybody instead of just being on a show and, actually asking you guys questions. So as I mentioned, super awkward. Anyway, going to say thank you guys. I appreciate your time coming on. That was probably more information than needed, but it's a thing, and it's true to where there's times where I don't know what to tell you. Like,
I'm just glad that sentence finished with TV, because you started off with a 12-inch, and I was like, whoa.
See, and that's your mind going somewhere, hey.
Yeah.
Never seen a 12-inch TV before?
Man, nope.
Black or white? Hey,
thank you guys for joining us. For our listeners and our viewers, thank you for joining us, giving us your evening. Going to give you the rest of that back. Remember, it's your life, it's your safety and protection, it's your responsibility. Y'all stay safe, and we'll see you next week.